I guess we'll move on to the NFC South. So the NFC South is perhaps the most talked about division in football these days. There's just so many stars at quarterback with Brady, Breeze. Kevin mentioned how they're towards the end of their careers. We got to pay attention to these matchups in the division. And this is just such a competitive division all around. All four teams, you can argue for having potency and being able to win solid games in the division. And obviously, it's the Saints or the Bucks, but Kevin mentioned earlier the Falcons are also in the race. So let's just start clean and say who our top team in this division is.
Obviously, as a Saints fan, I think it's going to be the Saints. They have made better additions. They were already a great team last year.
Am I deaf, or did Geoffrey say as a Saints fan?
I said Saints.
To continue my point, I'm just going to ignore that. They were a great team last year, and now they've made additions in Emmanuel Sanders. They added what's his name, Malcolm Jenkins, and Cesar Ruiz. And we just saw today that they released Larry Warford, so that pick makes even more sense. And Emmanuel Sanders, the Saints really needed a second wide receiver last year. Michael Thomas was the only real target, and Traquan Smith was bad. Ted Ginn did not know how to catch the ball. And now we finally have a solid second wide receiver. And Malcolm Jenkins is going to replace Juan Bell. They're about the same player, but Malcolm Jenkins is a much better leader, and he's going to lead that Saints defense, including Demary Davis. So I think the Saints are going to be the best team in the division.
I mean, I've got to agree, right? Everyone talks about it. The Saints have continuity, all right? And earlier, Geoffrey mentioned, when you have a new coach or a new player coming in, I mean, even though they're experienced, still the Saints have a head coach quarterback tandem spanning years, right? Sean Payton and Drew Brees. And they bring back a roster that's been basically together for now like the past 3 or 4 years, save a few people. Malcolm Jenkins brings communication in addition to leadership. So, I think if we had Malcolm Jenkins last year, that play against the Vikings never gets snapped. I think Malcolm Jenkins would have saw the mismatch. Like, that's what you got to see as a leader of that defense. You've got to see where the mismatches are. You got to see where you're lining up against certain players. I think you would have saw, P.J. Williams lined up against Kyle Rudolph. That something's wrong here. But at the end of the day, the Saints, I think, have a top 10 defense. People say the Bucs have a good defense. They had the number 1 rush defense last year, but the Saints have also consistently been good against the rush. I don't think there has been a 100-yard rusher against the Saints for the past 2 seasons now. And Emmanuel Sanders brings another dimension to this offense. Remember, we retained Jared Cook. We have a Troutman from the draft. We have Alvin Kamara back to 100%. People forget he wasn't a bust last year. He didn't regress. He had an injury. There's a clear difference between regressing and having an injury. We bring back Latavius Murray, so that's a good combo we have in the running back committee. And overall, we still got Drew Brees in his prime. I mean, well, not prime, but he's still better than Tom Brady. Let me tell you that. Tom Brady's – there's so much hype around Tom Brady, but clearly Tom Brady had a regression. Some may say he didn't have weapons. If you're the greatest quarterback of all time, you should lift up the players around you. That's what you've been doing all this time. Drew Brees did not have a Pro Bowl receiver until Michael Thomas, right? Or Brendan Cooks, whichever one came first. So, at the end of the day, the Saints have continuity. They have veteran leadership. They have a great locker room, great leaders. The Saints are the clear NFC South favorites to me. I'm biased. I don't care.
Yeah, I just have – maybe I have to agree with you guys, just being a Saints fan. But, if you just look at the rest of the division, the Panthers are clearly probably in a rebuild phase at this point. The Falcons added, Old Man Gurley and a bunch of first-round busts to their offense, They had Laquan Treadwell. I think the guy had like 300 yards in a 4-year career. I think the closest competition comes from Buccaneers and Tom Brady, but Bruce Arians and Tom Brady's gonna have to learn his offense. He's gonna be in a new, completely different system from the one that Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick ran in New England. So I think the Saints definitely have an advantage, and I think they're going to be the clear favorites here in the NFC South.
I disagree with the fact that the Panthers are a rebuild team this year. If you look at that team, Teddy Bridgewater, he was a solid quarterback last year, and they obviously have Christian McCaffrey. They have DJ Moore. Matt Rule's a really good coach, and they added Joe Brady from LSU, who really turned around that Wolves system, and he can probably do that with the Panthers. And they also added a bunch of defensive draft picks. Every single one of the picks was a defensive player. So the defense is also revamped. I feel like the Panthers, they're not. I don't think they're going to be anywhere close to the Saints or the Bucks, but I feel like they're going to be a competitive team.
Okay, well, to your point, like you said, they've added, all these new players, all new coaches. I think that's exactly why I would say they're in a rebuild. Like, they fired the head coach, they got a new offensive coordinator, they got a new quarterback. Everything about the team is different. I think the only person from I think they have one player from their Super Bowl run back in 2015. Like, they're a completely different team. They're gonna have to find their identity, and learn how to be the new Panthers. I really don't see them succeeding at all, and I think that it's going to be a couple years until they actually start, maybe even sniffing a division title.
I got to agree with Darren on the fact that the Panthers are in a rebuild. Partially, it's more of an accelerated rebuild because you can't just lose your head coach, your offensive coordinator, your franchise quarterback, and not call it a rebuild, right? They got new people in all those key positions in the franchise. And also, but I still think they can win games, maybe 6 or 7. But bringing up Teddy Bridgewater actually made me, think about backup quarterbacks. Breeze goes down. We still have a 5,000-yard passer there who can learn the offense and do well. What happens when Tom Brady goes down? Who's going to take over? Ryan Griffin? Come on, man.
Who's that?
And actually, I think he was once on the Saints roster. I could be wrong. But again, the Saints have a lot of depth. That's one of the biggest things people don't realize. Maybe not a wide receiver, but at almost every other position, we have one of the most. Deep offensive lines. When someone goes down, we have someone to come in and they're pretty decent. Our defensive line is very strong. Our secondary's gotten a lot better over the years. I just think that the Saints can actually have the insurance plans in place in case a key player goes down, whereas the Buccaneers, I don't think so.
Yeah,
and this is also rumored to be Drew Brees' last season, so you might see the Wolves team unite and not choke every they did every other season.
It's the last dance.
Mm-hmm. That's what I call it.
Documentary coming soon. Yep, I totally agree with all of you. Saints, period. You look at the other teams in the division, the Bucks, we don't know what they're going to look like. And the Falcons, speaking from a Saints fan's perspective, putting that aside, actually, if you look at the divisional games, that's where I think the Saints, if there's trouble, that's where they would have the trouble. I think the Saints will take care of business for sure with regards to the non-divisional games, but divisional games are always close. And some of the Falcons' defense has actually been deteriorated over the past couple of seasons with regards to injuries. So the Falcons' defense is stronger than it seems, and the Bucks are such a talented roster. So that's where the potential concern comes from. But like you guys said, the Saints are the best overall team in the division, and they have continuity.
And just one thing other to mention, the schedule, right? I think the Saints have a tough schedule, but I'm actually excited for it because the NFL basically gifted the Saints the opportunity to prove what we're made of. We're the only team in the NFL to play both Super Bowl teams this season. We're playing both the Chiefs and the 49ers. if you look at the Saints' schedule, a lot of the tough teams that the Saints play against, it's at home for the Saints. It's in Superdome. So like I hope we have the crowd, right? Because the crowd factor is huge for New Orleans. But even if it isn't, it's in a dome. It's in a controlled environment. That's where we play best. I mean, even if we, don't have the fans, I still think having the Superdome is a huge advantage. And I'm just looking forward to what the Saints can do this season. Buccaneers are so overhyped because they got a 43-year-old quarterback. They have 5 primetime games because they got Tampa Bay over there. And they got Gronk. So people say, oh, he took a year off. He's probably going to be fresh. No! At that age, he's in his 30s. Your muscles are going to become tense. You're not if you're out of shape. I mean, probably he worked out, but it's still different from being in that football body. So Gronk's not going to be the same version that we've seen him over the years. People are overhyping a 43-year-old quarterback and a 30-something-year-old tight end. It's ridiculous.
I'm calling it right now. This year's Buccaneers or last year's Browns? I'm calling it right now. That's my hot take.
Well,
that's a pretty hot take.
Darren, if you make that comparison, then maybe Geoffrey probably thinks the Buccaneers are going to make the Super Bowl because last year Geoffrey said the Browns are going to the Super Bowl.
No, I never said that.
Yes, you did.
I said Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl.
Well, we need to get Suraj Zaveri here as a witness.
Well, I disagree with that. I think Baker Mayfield is not Tom Brady. I mean, other way around. Tom Brady is not Baker Mayfield, and Bruce Arians is not Freddie Kitchens. So I think we're going to see more success from the Bucks than we saw the Browns. So I wouldn't go that far and say that this year's Bucks are the last year's Browns. But you can see that not necessarily the talent on the roster will translate to success on the field.
Yeah, I think y'all are discounting the Bucks. They might not win the division, but they're still going to be a good team. I think Gronk is washed, but they have another tight end. They have O.J. Howard, and he was one of the best tight ends in this draft class.
He's not utilized correctly by the Buccaneers.
I agree. Mainly because Bruce Arians' system doesn't really use a tight end. And then
the point. Drew Brees was firing on all cylinders, got a Pro Bowl wide receiver for a lot of his career. So don't give me any of that, oh, I don't have any weapons.
No, if you look at the Buccaneers this year, their weapons are so much better than what they were last year. With Brady last year. Brady had a 32-year-old wide receiver and Julian Edelman, and that was basically it. And now if you look at the Buccaneers, they have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, who had a huge breakout season last year. They added Keyshawn Logan in the draft, who looks like he's going to be a decent running back. And again, they have 2 good tight ends. I don't know if they're going to be used well, but they're still good weapons. And I feel like if Tom Brady, it might take him some time to adjust to this new system, but when he does, the Buccaneers are going to be a good team.
Oh, I think playoffs for sure for Buccaneers, but wild card.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it was nice talking about these divisions with you guys. M2M is expanding. We are working on some new projects, new ideas. Stay tuned. We hope you enjoyed our talking about the NFC. We'll be talking about the AFC hopefully soon. So follow us on Instagram again. Subscribe on YouTube. And this is M2M signing off.